Since I was young, I have been reading energy and watching, observing, asking questions. I'm a naturally curious person, and I make sense of the world by asking questions and getting the answers while also tuning into the energy and putting it together. And I have also been in the realm of human development and psychology and psychological spiritual transformation for many, many years now, and working with all of you one-on-one for 8 years full time. So I have some experience and I've been doing my own personal work. One of the things that I've noticed is that over the last few years, things have been really clicking. And the way that I'm intaking information and making sense of it has changed significantly. And I would assume that some of that is the same for you as well. Because if you're doing spiritual awakening, you're trying to understand yourself, understand what the heck you're doing here and why the world works the way it does. Well, you too have been tracking and practicing, noticing what is odd or off, looking at how your brain takes in information and then the thoughts that it generates about that information. So I'm talking about this because we're moving into Gemini season. We are making the transition from Taurus, which is so physical, it's so body centered, into the archetype of the mind. And I think the mind is our greatest enemy. The mind is ruled by Mercury. And we're talking about Mercury ruling the sign of Gemini. And Gemini is the trickster, and the mind is a trickster. The mind manipulates and changes things in order to have its agenda met. It's really easy to look outside of ourselves and say, oh, the media is manipulating us, or the government is manipulating us, or my friend is, or my partner, or that social group. And all of those things might have some truth to them. But the bottom line of how we are completely manipulated starts with our own mind and the way that we allow our minds to take us away into destructive, fearful, fantastical, disillusioned, anxious place. And of course, this is hard to look at. Nobody wants to really look at how powerful the mind is. And in an age where we are starting to look at AI and we are starting to see that there is this thing now that is actually more powerful than the human mind, can work much faster, come up with ideas that are more concise, that it's time for us to really look at our own minds and how our minds operate, how our minds run us, and look at taking back some sort of control. And, I say mind control jokingly when I talk about Gemini. Partially it's a joke and partially it's not, because we do want to practice mind control. What do we allow into our mind? What do we do with the thoughts that we allow into our mind? Most of us living an unexamined life, living a life on autopilot, aren't paying that much attention to our minds. We believe whatever our minds tell us. That person is a jerk. That experience was traumatizing. I'm bad. I should have completed that task. I should have saved that money. I should have made different choices. So our mind is very seductive. If we are living a spiritual awakening life and we are trying to understand, we have reached a point where we have to get how powerful our minds are, and we have to take some form of control over our minds so that we can use that to feel better, create more personal power, understand things from different perspectives, tap into our spiritual connections. Our mind has so many powers that we actually don't even use it for, because we are so busy just allowing it to be busy and running the show and talking about celebrities and who did what and what someone's wearing and how young or old or wrinkly or fat or thin somebody is, right? So think about your mind and how much useless information it's trying to generate. All right, so where am I going with this? Well, I'm going to talk about this in today's episode as we are entering into Gemini season. So we're going to be talking about this all month, but I want you to start to consider the idea of controlling your mind and what that might look like. What follows is a teaching that was from season 5 on my podcast, Star Narratives. It has been edited. So all of these teachings are both on the podcast, Star Narratives. Hello, listeners, and on YouTube. Hello, watchers. Make sure to like and subscribe so that you can get notified when a new episode drops, and also so that more people can find the information. By the way, I'm Natha Perkins of Electra Astrology, and you can always work with me privately, book a private reading, become an apprentice, or engage in a mentorship at electraastrology.com. And as I record this in 2025, we are staring down the planet Uranus entering into the sign of Gemini. Massive changes are coming in the way that we use our mind as we navigate the mental field. So this is all really potent timing. This entire Gemini season is going to be ushering in some new stuff, and it's going to relate to the way that we think and the way that we respond to the world and the way that we use our minds. So I want to give you some food for thought to just be thinking about that. And be sure to tune in and catch all of the Gemini talks. I'm also going live on YouTube, so those will be under the live tab. So we're going to be talking about it because I don't know about you, but I find this stuff completely fascinating. And I'm so excited to get to jump into it with all of you. So let's get into the teaching, and I'll see you all soon. Today, we're looking at the transition between Taurus into Gemini, and I'm wondering if you all are feeling it. It is time to begin a new chapter, and that is the Gemini chapter. If you are new to this podcast, I go through every sun sign and I talk about a different facet of each sun sign every single week. This does not have to be your personal sun sign for you to benefit. Astrology is an amazing tool for organizing our human psyche and for deepening into an understanding of who you are and what you're doing on the planet right now, what you're trying to heal, what your gifts are, what your mission is. So I break it down for you every week, diving into a different part of each sign. And I ask you questions that are designed to self-inquire so that you make connections that you've maybe never made before. You're able to see yourself in a slightly new light, and that brings you closer to your healing and closer to knowing yourself on a deeper level, which is the whole point if you're listening to this podcast. So a reminder that the sun is connected to our self, to who we are, to our heart. And we use the sun to better understand where we're at any given point in our lives. So we are all born with a sun sign. That speaks to the lessons that we're learning things through, the themes that we become the most intimate with. And then we all have the sun in the sky. And the sun in the sky moves through a different sign every single month. And that is our opportunity to really deepen into the lessons of that particular sign. So even if you don't have much Gemini in your chart, this is still a valuable archetype to study and understand. And I would go so far as to say that all of the personal zodiac signs, Aries, Taurus, Gemini, Cancer, Leo, and Virgo, these are all the signs that we struggle with the most. These are all signs that all of us have very unique struggles in. And they are the signs that we really can't ignore because they are so woven into our every moment of every day. These are the signs that we really don't get to play around with much when we're in spirit form. And I think that's part of why we come down to be in human form, is to get to roll up our sleeves and experience these things that can be difficult, but that carry such evolutionary power as we nail them, right? As we get better at them. So we talked through Taurus season about the body and Taurus being connected to our self-confidence, our self-worth, our fears of lack, our fears of not having enough, and the way that we can dig our heels in and get very obstinate when we feel that we have to have something our way. And then also the relationship to the physical body, the pleasures, using the body to inform you and partnering with the body as a way to really deepen into a sense of peace. And those are things that are hard. We're all always going to have some sort of concern about, do I have enough? Does this feel good?
Do people find me attractive and appealing? Am I right? Are they wrong? These questions that we've been discussing for the last 5 weeks. This week, we begin that transition into Gemini. And Gemini is ruled by Mercury. It belongs in the third house. And these are all connected to the mind, to our thoughts, to our perceptions, and the ways that we communicate with people. So, understanding this Gemini archetype for all of us is pretty important. I would say that most of us are currently falling short when it comes to how we allow our minds to rule. As we're trying to do this higher level spiritual awakening, we're learning to trust our divine guidance. We're learning how to allow divine timing. We're learning how to connect with things that are greater than we are and overcome our trauma and change our belief systems. This is work that absolutely requires that we continue to chop wood and carry water in these more personal archetypes. So, in the case of Aries, we have to be on top of our boundaries. We have to be on top of whether or not something is meeting our needs. With Taurus, we have to really get into the body and partner with the body, understand our relationship to how we get what we need. With Gemini, we have to learn to conquer the mind. And the mind is a very, very powerful thing. You've heard me say that in almost all of my readings, the mind is what shows up as the big enemy. It's not the trauma, it's the mind and the stories that the mind has to tell us about what's wrong, how things will never get better. And it's the mind that tells us that we will never have enough, that we screwed something up. It's the mind that gets incredibly busy and distracts us and tells us stories and tells us lies and whispers things to us in the middle of the night that really derail us. And so we're going to dive into that as we progress through Gemini season. Gemini is a mutable sign ruled by Mercury, a mutable planet. And we tap into the mutable signs, the mutable being Gemini, Virgo, Sagittarius, and Pisces, when the seasons are preparing to go into a shift. So, in the Northern Hemisphere, when the sun enters Gemini, this is when we are preparing to go between spring and summer. And so, there's a lot of back and forth with the mutable signs. We're not supposed to be strong and solid, and we're not supposed to be rushing into a new action. We're kind of cleaning up the loose ends. We're kind of visioning for what's next, but there is this fluidity that's required, and the mind can be very fluid, and the mind can also be very rigid. So, as we move through these next few weeks, I want you to really tune into the quality of your thoughts and how fluid is your mind. Now, people with a lot of mutability in their charts are people that have a hard time making decisions, hard time settling into something. They can be very flaky. They can have a million things going on at once. And they can also be the people that are great at troubleshooting, at needing to gather all of the information before making a decision, and at being able to hold a bunch of pieces together all at once, a bunch of balls in the air. So there are good things and there are difficult things about mutability. But what we're going to look at this week, as we're just going to hold that transition between Taurus and Gemini in our minds, how does your body respond to your thoughts? So, a good way to do this inquiry is to notice the next time that you have a physical symptom that crops up, maybe a bloated belly, a tight back, a crick in your neck, a headache, tight shoulders, an achy knee, whatever your typical symptoms are, whatever you tend to deal with, these things that pop up regularly, these physical discomforts. What you can do is when you notice that something has shown up in your physical body, you can backtrack and you can look at what was going on the last 24 hours, last 48, last 72 hours as it related to my thoughts. What was I thinking about? And what you'll probably find is that your mind was telling you something about what was wrong or about who had wronged you. Sometimes You might notice that you get a stomach ache when somebody has asked you to do something that you didn't want to do and you agreed and you are resentful about that. You might find that you have a headache when you get overwhelmed. There's too much information coming in and your mind is trying to get you to go and get you to organize and get you moving on that. You might notice an achy shoulder correlating to worries about money, feeling as if you are stressed out and overburdened. So this is a way to begin to correlate, if you're not already doing this, how your thoughts actually impact your physical body. And then you can use your physical body as a mindfulness bell. I have been ruminating about this, or I have been so angry about this conversation that I had that I have been grinding my teeth and it's making my jaw hurt. One of the things that we'll talk about when it comes to this Gemini archetype around the mind is how we go unconscious and how easily we end up thinking the same repetitive and really dysfunctional and even damaging thoughts over and over. Our mind does like autopilot, it likes to conserve energy. And so you might find that before you even realize it, you're replaying some scenario in your mind about this person that has been doing you wrong for years and you're angry about it. You're tightening up your neck, tightening up your shoulders, and now you have a headache. So, this is the beginning of the process of becoming more self aware around how your thoughts show up and how they impact your physical body. And that's what we do as we transition from Taurus into Gemini, as we begin to see the symbiotic relationship between the body and the mind. And we want to slow down the tendency to go into autopilot and just allow our thoughts to overtake us and allow our thoughts to create tension in the body. And we want to see it fast enough so that we're not doing it for hours on end unconsciously before we realize that it's happened and now we have a physical symptom. So take a deep breath and just tune into your physical body as it sits with you today. Notice whether you have any tension. And where do you tend to hold your tension in your body? Most of us tend to have our go-to places that get tired and cramped. So what is calling for your attention right now? What is achy or painful or just simply needs a little space? And when you find that place or those places, just take some deep breaths into that spot. And imagine that your breaths are just creating a little bit of room in that contraction. And then, depending on where that contraction or that pain or that ache is, what do you think is the thought process that has been running in the back of your mind that is impacting this space? I've noticed that when I have headaches, that it tends to be a problem around overthinking. When I have some stress or tension in my solar plexus, it tends to feel like anxiety. When I feel it in my intestines or my sacral area, it tends to be irritation. And so you might correlate some similar places in your own body, some similar emotions. If you have achy feet or legs or knees, that could be an issue with moving forward or taking steps towards something. Achy hips can be repressed emotions. And you can find a lot of information on the internet about the emotional connection to different spots in your body. This is an interesting practice in getting connected to what those repetitive thoughts are and how they impact you. If you're somebody that's overthinking and you always have a million things on your to-do list and you're trying to remember them all because you have a huge cognitive load going on in your head, then you might be somebody that has headaches. So again, begin to make these connections so that you are stepping into the driver's seat here. Remember that there is a fine line between trying to get in and control everything that's going on, meddling with your process, and trying to more deeply understand what's happening. And that's all that we're trying to do this week. We're beginning to make the connections between the mind, the power of the mind, and how the mind impacts the physical body, and then how the physical body can be used to better understand the mind. And so when you do notice, as you are making these connections this next week, how your mind impacts your body, the next step for that is to have a practice to calm the mind. And sometimes the best way to do that is simply to take a deep breath and have the awareness that you have been ruminating on something that is causing stress in the body. We're going to go into this in future episodes. One of my favorite things about Gemini is that it is also connected to the present moment, being in the moment, in what is here right now. And we know that the mind has a hard time being in the present moment. The mind likes to travel backward, to think about things that went wrong in the past or things that went amazing. And it likes to travel forward and try to prepare for the future, or maybe try to predict how the most amazing future could go, or predict how crappy the future could be. The mind is busy zooming back and forth, but the biggest sense of peace that we can find, especially when we notice that we have generated a lot of tension in our body because of what we've been thinking about, the remedy lies in the present moment, in that deep breath, feet on the ground, coming back into the here and now, looking around your life, looking around the room and saying, am I safe? Yes. Am I warm? Am I cool? Do I have enough? Yes, yes, yes. All right. I can let those worries go for a moment as I enjoy this very present moment that I am in. And the more that we're tapped into the present moment, the less power all of that rumination, overthinking, zipping around has on us. And the more settled our body and our nervous system can get. Mercury also rules the sign of Virgo, which we'll talk about in the summer and fall when we're in Virgo season. And that is where we talk about the nervous system and how our thoughts are completely connected to our nervous system. So this is also some nervous system work that we're going to be working on here over the next week as you're tuning into that connection between mind and body. But in the meantime, I'm just going to leave you with this. Whenever you notice that there is some sort of physical discomfort, I want you to pay attention to it. I want you to really give it your attention, almost as if you would a child who is having a meltdown. What can I do for you? What is happening? You seem overstimulated. How can we fix this and bring you back into equilibrium? And that's what you're going to do with your body this week, is how can I fix this pain, discomfort, contraction, and bring it back into a space of contentment and peace, even if only for a moment. And the key to that is to look at what you've been thinking about, the journey that your mind has taken you on, or rather the nightmare that your mind has been conjuring back behind the scenes, because the mind is running on autopilot. It's like having a TV running in the room. What channel do you want your TV tuned to? Some horror show that's playing scary music that's making you afraid every time you hear a noise in your house? Or do you want it on something that's pleasant, that's easy, that you don't have to give so much effort to, that's not going to stress you out? So that's what we're working on this week. Just noticing how your mind goes on autopilot and impacts your body, and then use your body as the alert system for an autopilot mind that's tuned to a channel that you don't want it on. And as the weeks progress, we're going to keep diving into this Gemini archetype and really looking at the power of your mind and the power that you can take over your mind and how that eases everything.